Someone from an adjacent group said, "That woman's part of such a bottom-tier group," and I heard it. I turned to see 3 women staring at us, and I stared them in the eye. "Running into you here ruins our party, doesn't it?" One of them mouthed right away. She was the one who talked first, based on her tone. They seemed to be speaking directly to us. Margaret, seated beside me, looked down uneasily as I watched them warily. "Margaret, is something wrong?" I questioned her. With her eyes still downcast, she muttered, "That woman used to be my senior at my previous job. I understand. So it was that woman that tortured her. I can't ignore this for Margaret's benefit and our company's honor." I felt a surge of rage from deep within. I'm Richard Moore, a 42-year-old systems engineer working for a system development firm. I oversee system development initiatives and hold the position of chief. The latest technology might become obsolete in a matter of years, making technical improvements in this business exceptional. It moves at such a rapid pace. You will fall behind if you don't always look forward. It's crucial to hire skilled workers and implement the newest technologies in order to stay ahead. My primary responsibility is project management, but I also concentrate on hiring qualified candidates. Contract recruiters provide me with information, and if someone seems potential, I make an effort to meet them. I've already hired a lot of top-notch system engineers in this manner. Many gifted individuals have not been given the opportunity to showcase their skills. Some lost their employment as a result of downsizing or corporate insolvency, while others experienced workplace relationships that made them miserable. My goal is to raise awareness of these people and provide them with opportunities. An excellent example is Margaret Davis, whom I employed a month ago. Her humble and reserved demeanor at the age of 30 hindered her from showcasing her skills at her prior position. But after I hired her, I discovered that she is really capable and now works with a lot of energy. She was thinking about quitting this field and going into another one, even though she was a very skilled systems engineer. After multiple interviews, I managed to persuade her. But it was a near miss. I nearly lost a talented technician. In her case, the atmosphere at her former job had a big impact on her decision to quit. She faced unreasonable treatment and thought it would be better to quit being a systems engineer than to endure such experiences. When a system I was in charge of at my previous job developed problems, it resulted in huge losses, she said when I asked about her reason for leaving during the interview. However, after listening carefully, I found out that the problem wasn't her fault. She was blamed for her senior's mistake and forced to resign. At first, she had a friendly and supportive senior, but at some point, that senior suddenly became harsh. The senior was her mentor when she joined, a woman 4 years older. At Margaret's company, new hires were paired with a senior who guided them in professional manners and technical skills as systems engineers. This mentor-mentee relationship often continued over the years, and Margaret always worked under that senior. Initially, they had a good relationship. But around the 3rd year, the senior's attitude suddenly became prickly. She started pushing unrelated tasks onto Margaret and forcing her into unreasonable overtime. Even when Margaret came up with good ideas, the senior would take credit. And if the senior made a mistake, Margaret would be blamed. It seems such unfair situations continued. "Do you have any idea what might have caused it?" I asked her one day. I'm not sure. Maybe I pointed out one of my senior's mistakes, and that upset her, she said, as if squeezing out the words. The tense atmosphere between them persisted, leading to a critical problem. It was a malfunction in a major credit card company's payment system. The system crashed because of a function her senior had created. It was clearly not Margaret's fault, yet her senior, with a high-handed attitude, blamed Margaret, making it seem like she was at fault. Margaret has a timid nature that prevents her from directly confronting such situations. The difference between her verbose senior and Margaret's hesitance became starkly apparent. Because of this incident, the credit card company incurred significant losses, and she was treated as if she was the cause. She wasn't fired, but she couldn't resist the toxic atmosphere her senior created. People whispered behind my back, brought contempt upon me. The office felt like a place where I wasn't welcome, and it was mentally draining. I felt so cornered that quitting seemed like the only option, she said. There was a salesman at that company whom Margaret admired, 5 years her senior. He was the CEO's nephew and was expected to have a bright future. Margaret and he were becoming quite close. He was such a wonderful person. We had meals together and went to the movies. I was hoping we could be more, she said, a look of sadness in her eyes. But everything was ruined because of this incident. Though it's unclear what triggered it, her senior's unreasonable behavior almost closed the door on a promising systems engineer's future. I'm genuinely glad I could save her. Our recruiter's interest in Margaret was heavily influenced by her previous job. The company she worked for, S-Technology, is a competitor of ours. Both companies specialize in business system development, so we often compete. In fact, the payment system for the card company, which led to Margaret's resignation, was a project where we lost to DB Technology. Our recruiter got wind of a systems engineer from our rival company being available and reported it to me. I moved quickly to recruit her. I don't know where our recruiter gets his information, but he has an incredible amount of it. He knew the details of the systems Margaret had worked on and her role in them. Technology is a thorn in our side. Poaching a systems engineer from such a rival company is an opportunity we couldn't miss. Moreover, since Margaret was effectively forced to resign, there are no ethical issues. Once we hired her, we were amazed at how excellent she was, wondering why such a talented systems engineer was let go. She quickly adapted to our work environment, integrated into the project team, and delivered immediate results. While she was described as quiet and reserved, that wasn't exactly the case. I believe the problem lay with her previous workplace, which didn't listen to her. How do you find the atmosphere here? If you have any issues, feel free to let me know. I asked her about 2 months after she joined. Everyone is very kind, and I enjoy coming to work. I can use my skills from the previous company, and my opinions are valued, so I feel fulfilled every day. Margaret, who was initially nervous, became more cheerful each day. Besides being extremely competent at her job, she's now a popular figure in our department. Shortly after she joined, a significant turning point arrived for her. We once again competed with S-Technology in a major financial system development project. In this development, Margaret's talent blossomed. She proposed innovative ideas one after another, leading to significant cost reductions. The system maintained excellent functionality while being more cost-effective. This became a major selling point to the client. Without Margaret, we wouldn't have been able to build such an advantage. As a result, we secured the competitive contract. Margaret, you did a great job. Without your efforts, we might not have secured this project. No thanks to everyone. I'm grateful to you, Chief, for giving me this opportunity. I highly valued Margaret's contribution and appointed her as the project leader. Margaret, who was driven out of S-Technology and was considering quitting as a system engineer, joined our company and took charge of a system development project worth $300,000 in monthly sales. 6 months into the development, the project Margaret is handling is progressing smoothly. She has become an indispensable part of our company. However, one day, an unexpected problem arose. It was at the party, which also served as a welcome party for Margaret, a year after she joined us at the beginning of April when the cherry blossoms were in full bloom. We decided to have a party at a famous cherry blossom spot near our office. The young employees in our department reserved a spot from the morning, prepared food and drinks, and everyone gathered together. We were blessed with calm weather, perfect for a party. Margaret, I'm sorry it took so long to do this. I've been meaning to have a welcome party, but this past year has been hectic. At the start of the party, I apologized to Margaret. Margaret responded with a cheerful smile. It's totally fine. With this project, I finally feel like a part of this company, so now is perfect. If it was right after I joined, I would have been too nervous to enjoy it. The party continued in a lively and cheerful atmosphere. However, about an hour in, some members of a neighboring group kept glancing our way. I wondered if there was someone they knew among us. Then I overheard words that seemed to be directed at us. Such a bottom-tier group that woman is in. I looked towards the voice and made eye contact with 3 women staring at us. Immediately, one of them spoke. Running into them here ruins our party. It was clear from her tone that she was the one who spoke earlier. The words were obviously directed at us. Who are they talking about? And what do they mean by bottom-tier group? As I wondered about the meaning of their words, I noticed my Margaret sitting next to me, looking down uneasily. Come to think of it, she had been quiet since the neighboring group showed up. I had a hunch that she might know someone in that group, so I decided to ask her, "Margaret, is something wrong?" She whispered softly without looking up. The group next to us, they are my former colleagues, and that person is my old senior. Hearing this, everything clicked into place. So it was that woman who tormented her. She stole Margaret's credit, blamed her for mistakes, belittled her, and now even mocked our company. A feeling of anger welled up from deep inside me. The woman continued to speak loudly enough for us to hear. Who chose this spot? No taste at all. Being next to trashy people makes the beer taste bad. Vulgar words kept pouring from her mouth. For Margaret's sake, and for the sake of our company, I couldn't let this pass. It wasn't just me. My subordinates felt the same way, and a tense atmosphere began to develop. One of my subordinates was about to stand up defiantly. I stopped him with one hand and stood up determinedly. Then I faced the group next to us. You seem to be talking to us. Do you have a problem? If you do, say it to our faces. I directed strong words at the three women. The woman in the center, who seemed to be Margaret's former senior, glared at me and said, "We don't have any business with you. It's just that the woman who dropped out and left our company is over there. Is she even useful? I think she's pretty useless." She smirked and shifted her gaze to Margaret. Margaret froze like a deer in headlights. The woman's brazen attitude infuriated me. Thinking that this was the person who tormented Margaret only made me angrier. You call her a dropout, but isn't that a mistake? Or if you really believe that, then you're blind. But maybe it's not just you. Maybe your entire company failed to see her value. I countered with a mocking laugh. All eyes in the neighboring group were on me, and a murmur began. Still, it was only Margaret Sr. who spoke clearly. It's hilarious that you think Margaret is competent. She was useless at our company. If you think hiring such a failure makes her excellent, there's something wrong with your company. As she said this, the people around her nodded in agreement. It was clear that Margaret Sr. was the one leading this group with her strong influence. No one dared to oppose her. Margaret must have felt the same way. Margaret wasn't naturally quiet or reserved. It was all due to her senior's influence. So you all worked with Margaret, which means you're from S Technology. We're a system development company. Being in the same industry, you must know us, right? I said this, and I heard murmurs of disbelief from the neighboring group. I confirmed their reaction and continued, "Since this is a great opportunity, let me tell you how exceptional Margaret is." I explained how we won a competitive contract against S Technology thanks to Margaret's proposals. I also mentioned that Margaret is now the project leader and that the development is progressing smoothly. If it weren't for Margaret, you might have won that contract. Do you understand now how excellent she is as a system engineer? If she were incompetent, then it means you were beaten by someone incompetent. In other words, you're even worse than incompetent. As I belittled them, Margaret's senior angrily responded, "That was just a fluke." It must have been. Margaret occasionally had a good idea at our company too. It's just a case of even a blind squirrel finding a nut sometimes. Winning a competition with a random good idea isn't that easy. It seems she doesn't want to admit Margaret's competence. No, with other employees watching, she can't admit it. As her senior, she should know better than anyone how talented Margaret is, but she can't bear to lose to a junior. That misplaced pride must have twisted her character, so she refused to acknowledge Margaret's talent and took credit for her work. By applying pressure, she ensured that Margaret would stay silent, maintaining a hierarchical relationship. Given their history, admitting Margaret's talent now is impossible. If she did, it would undermine her position. In other words, to maintain her self-worth, she needs Margaret to remain a poor system engineer. But I can't let that happen. To clear Margaret's name. Deep down, you know better than anyone how talented Margaret is, don't you? If you worked with her as her senior and didn't recognize her abilities, I think you're the one who should be considered a failure as a system engineer. When I spoke in a provocative manner, her face twitched. That's not true. Margaret made a huge mistake and had to leave our company. There's no way she's competent, she retorted vehemently. That's because you pinned your mistake on Margaret. She didn't make any mistakes. Everyone around knows that. If no one saw through it, then it's not just her. All of you are incompetent, I said firmly. She quickly tried to refute it, but no words came to her, and she was left speechless. Margaret, who had been looking down beside me, noticed this and looked up. I thought Margaret might say something to her senior. I hoped she would, as it would clear her past at the previous workplace. However, Margaret didn't say anything to her senior. Instead, she looked elsewhere. Following her gaze, I saw a man fidgeting nervously. I realized their eyes were meeting. Something was about to happen. The man finally spoke. "Margaret, is that why you left the company?" he questioned. Margaret looked into his eyes and nodded slightly. "Did everyone know about this?" "You all knew and kept it hidden?" As he looked around, everyone averted their eyes simultaneously. I remembered Margaret mentioning that she had a man she liked at her previous workplace. He was the CEO's nephew and a salesman. This must be him. So he didn't know the full details of why Margaret resigned. The man continued, "Lisa, what is going on? You told me that Margaret was the cause of the system failure and that I should stay away from her. You said that supporting Margaret would hurt my chances for promotion, so I should cut ties with her." The man, calling Margaret Sr., Lisa by her first name, questioned her harshly. Lisa's eyes darted nervously, clearly unsettled by the revelation. "David, wait. It's true that Margaret caused the system failure and brought damage to the company. Isn't that right, everyone?" Lisa sought agreement from the group, but most people kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact. It was clear that Lisa was beginning to be isolated. Surely those gathered here were followers of Lisa, preferring to avoid trouble. That's why they acted as she instructed. They knew Margaret was a competent system engineer and that Lisa was in the wrong, but were too weak to oppose her. While Lisa was clearly at fault, these people were no better. I placed a hand on Margaret's shoulder and spoke to her. "Margaret, it's time for you to tell the truth. You are an indispensable member of our team. We stand by you, so you should muster the courage to clear your name." I saw the confusion in Margaret's eyes clear away. She nodded firmly and directed a sharp gaze at Lisa. Overwhelmed by Margaret's unwavering stare, Lisa showed signs of fear. The cause of the system failure was a bug in the module Lisa was responsible for, Margaret declared firmly. She then explained the cause of the system failure clearly and thoroughly. Margaret had noticed Lisa's mistake during the design phase. She found that a rare condition could cause a failure and had advised Lisa to strengthen the check function. However, Lisa insisted that such a scenario would never occur and ignored Margaret's warning. The malfunction only occurred under rare conditions, so the system operated without issues for a while after going live. However, when an operator performed an unusual operation, the bug emerged. It caused a major system crash, leading to significant losses for the client. Margaret knew right away that the issue was with Lisa's module, but before Margaret could point out the problem, Lisa spoke up. She claimed the issue was with the functionality Margaret was responsible for. Lisa fabricated evidence behind Margaret's back to assert her innocence. This created an atmosphere where everyone believed Margaret was at fault. Anyone familiar with Margaret's competence would have questioned this. However, the atmosphere Lisa created was so strong that no one stood up to prove Margaret's innocence. If her colleagues wouldn't help, Margaret should have proven her innocence herself. But having been suppressed by Lisa since she joined, she couldn't do it. Knowing this, Lisa pinned the blame on Margaret. It was my fault. If I had been stronger, I could have fixed Lisa's bug, and the system failure wouldn't have happened. Margaret acknowledged her weakness, trying to convince herself that it was the cause. But that's not true. You can't leave evil unpunished. Wait a minute, Margaret. What are you talking about? You're the one making things up. You've become a liar since you changed jobs. Blaming me is the lowest. Lisa rattled off her accusations, but the reaction was muted, and the tide had completely turned. A cold atmosphere surrounded Lisa, and the gazes directed at her were filled with disdain. On the other hand, apologetic looks were beginning to be directed at Margaret. They finally realized they had abandoned a talented system engineer. Lisa's standing at work would now weaken. No, it might have already collapsed completely. Her pressure was neutralized, and she would find herself with no place. Enough. You're the liar here. Look at your colleagues. Not a single one is standing by you. I yelled at Lisa. She quailed under the pressure, looking around frantically, realizing the coldness in the gazes directed at her. She slumped. Then someone else decided to pile on. It was David, the man Margaret had feelings for. I had no idea it had come to this. Lisa, have you been deceiving me all along? David shouted angrily. Lisa tried to say something, but her lips trembled, and no words came out. You said it was for my sake and dragged Margaret down, but it was all lies. You're a horrible woman. David's face turned red with rage. However, his expression also seemed to show some regret. Margaret, I'm sorry. I was a fool. David suddenly softened his tone. I was a fool for believing everything Lisa said. I knew you had feelings for me, but I couldn't trust you, and I'm truly sorry. David apologized to Margaret. Margaret stared at him in shock. Then Lisa interrupted. David, you're wrong. You're supposed to carry the company's future. You shouldn't get involved with a plain woman like her. This woman was trying to seduce you. I was only trying to stop her for your sake. I'm the only woman worthy of you, and you know it. Despite Lisa's desperate pleas, David's expression remained hard and cold. On the other hand, I gained some certainty from Lisa's words. It was about why Margaret was mistreated by Lisa. Margaret had said that her good relationship with Lisa suddenly changed at some point. It likely coincided with a time when Margaret and David started getting close. Lisa became jealous of Margaret's relationship with David and changed her attitude. She couldn't allow Margaret to take David from her. From that point on, Lisa began exploiting Margaret's high abilities, taking credit for her work. She then started belittling Margaret. She wanted David to think he shouldn't get involved with a woman like Margaret. Lisa, I'm ending our relationship. The engagement is off. I nearly got duped by a fraud. David glared at Lisa with hatred. It seemed that David and Lisa were in a relationship with marriage in mind that had just been canceled. With this, Lisa lost not only her facade at work, but also her fiancé. Stunned by the sudden news, Lisa froze for a moment and then, unable to bear it, stood up and disappeared into the crowd of people. As she walked away, her shoulders shaking, her back was filled with the sorrow of a woman who had lost everything. Watching her pitiful figure, another emotion began to rise within me. To break off an engagement in such a public setting was extremely cruel. I began to doubt David's character. Ignoring Lisa, who was walking away, David turned to Margaret and spoke. Margaret, I'm sorry you had to see that, but this is how things turned out. You and I are no longer together. Your name is cleared, and your competence is proven. So let's start from here. You had feelings for me too, right? David spoke as if confident of a positive response. I couldn't believe my ears. The man who had just publicly ended his engagement was now confessing to Margaret in the same place. What was he thinking? Was Margaret really in love with such an unrefined man? As I pondered this, I turned to Margaret, who began to speak with a slight smile. David, I'm glad to hear you say that. Margaret's face brightened, and seeing her expression, David smiled triumphantly. But in the next moment, Margaret's brow furrowed, and her gaze grew stunned. Margaret hesitated for a moment, then spoke resolutely. I don't have any feelings for you anymore. Regardless of the circumstances, I'm disappointed you would talk that way about someone who loved you. My life is very fulfilling now, so I don't have time to be involved with you. Margaret spoke clearly, breaking free from the past. I silently applauded her bold words. She had clearly grown stronger. She had become a woman who could speak her mind. On the other hand, David, rejected by Margaret, seemed unable to comprehend the unexpected turn of events. His gaze unfocused. Someone in our group let out a chuckle. It spread, and soon laughter erupted. David glared with a furrowed brow, but no one was intimidated by the now clownish figure. In the end, unable to bear the atmosphere, David left in a huff. With Lisa and David gone, the neighboring group fell silent. Without a word, they began cleaning out the place and quietly left. Our group's lively atmosphere contrasted with the now empty spot beside us. It seemed to symbolize the fate of the rival companies. Lisa, who happened to be next to us at the party, if she had kept quiet, nothing would have happened. But she dug her own grave due to her unnecessary words. With the twisted facts revealed, her authority crumbled. Moreover, she was abandoned by David, the CEO's nephew, who was supposed to be her fiancé. The day after the party, David reported Lisa's misdeeds to the CEO, causing a major internal issue. Lisa ignored Margaret's warnings, caused the trouble, and even tried to frame Margaret by fabricating evidence. Seeing this as a serious matter, Technology decided to dismiss her. Lisa literally lost everything. It's a fitting punishment for ruining the life of a talented system engineer. But her path would become even more difficult from here. Meanwhile, Margaret's life, which was disrupted by Lisa, took a turn for the better. After leaving Technology and joining us, she gained momentum, contributing to many system developments and securing competitive contracts. She is proactive in acquiring new technologies, is admired by junior employees, and treats them with respect, leading to an overall improvement in our team. She has now become a central figure in our company. Our company's performance is also thriving. We've significantly outpaced our rival company, Technology, to the point where they're no longer even on our radar. As for me, hiring Margaret has boosted my reputation tremendously. Now I've moved away from system development, and I'm focusing on the talent acquisition department. I find hidden talent and give them opportunities. I'm finding great fulfillment in this work to discover the next Margaret, the second or third. I travel all over the United States.